Why do religious people stress stage blue values such as integrity, character, discipline, family values, morality, righteousness, honesty, virtue, decency, goodness, hard work, honor, loyalty, responsibility? Surely you've heard religious people stress the importance of these. And oftentimes they do it in a very sort of puritanical way. They're very puritanical about it. Because, and in fact, they do it so puritanically and so dogmatically that it ends up backfiring, such that reasonable scientific people and skeptical people who are not subscribing to that dogma, they, like I said earlier, like what happened to me, they get a bad taste in their mouth just from these words. Like when I hear family values, I want to throw up when some, conservative on TV is saying them. Why is that? Because we know the hypocrisy of it, right? We know the evangelical preachers who preach, about virtue and righteousness and honesty and all this, and then they're actually cheating on their wife with some, gay friend in a parking lot, and they get caught and they're lying about it. So, we've seen enough of these cases that we know the hypocrisy of it. And so we see enough of that hypocrisy and we start to think like, oh, well, all that stuff is just bullshit. Well, that's a mistake. You got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The reality is that these characteristics are extremely important to living a good life. The problem is that these characteristics are easily faked. And getting the genuine article is very difficult. It requires a lot of consciousness and work, and it cannot be done ideologically or dogmatically, or robotically or algorithmically. You cannot follow the 10 Commandments to get integrity, character, and some of these other values. So a lot of what's happening is that spiral dynamic stage blue people, they don't have a very sophisticated understanding of human psychology and epistemology and all these topics that we spend, years talking about here in Actualized.org. They don't have this information. It took mankind many thousands of years to get to this point to have this kind of information accessible as it is now, easily for free and so forth through the internet. Before that, 1,000 years ago, how did mankind tell itself how to live life? Well, through these principles, and they taught them very religiously, robotically, dogmatically. And of course, the majority of people who follow these principles, their lives did improve, but also not to the highest levels. So really what was happening is that all of these characteristics and virtues and values, they were really pulled from the deepest, most integrous sages and mystics dating back thousands of years, who discovered these through God consciousness. They discovered truth and love through God consciousness and profound mystical states and psychedelics and meditation techniques and yoga and so forth. And then they tried to share this wisdom with the rest of mankind. But of course, the rest of mankind did not have enough integrity or consciousness to even understand what they were talking about. And they just turned it into rigid rules to follow. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not cheat and judge and other things like this. So the problem with stage blue is not that they have these values and that these values are wrong somehow. These values are amazing. These values are important. The problem is that they don't really give you the tools and understanding necessary, the depth of understanding necessary to really understand how to genuinely develop these values and virtues. They just tell you to follow some script. But a script is not consciousness. And what they don't tell you is that consciousness is the key to everything, because everything is consciousness. Truth and love is consciousness. So without consciousness, you can't get these qualities genuinely. So most religious people, what they end up doing their whole life is, because they've been brainwashed to believe that they have to be moral and value family and value honesty and decency and hard work. And so they do these things to a certain degree, and in a certain sense it helps them. But they don't really master them, and they don't really understand what generates them or why they're important. And so a lot of what they do is they just fake them. Even a lot of preachers and rabbis and imams fake these qualities. They don't really have it because you can't have it, because to have it, you have to break down the ego. To break down the ego, you'd have to also break down Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. You have to break down all these ideologies too, which of course they're attached to, and they don't want to break them down. You have to deconstruct everything to truly have integrity, character, righteousness, and honesty, and morality. Morality cannot be a formula. And so the problem we have is that we have a lot of these, stage blue versions of morality, and people have grown sour on them and disenchanted with them, rightly so. But you have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And basically what we need is a version of spiral dynamic stage blue, but which is totally open-minded, totally non-ideological, non-dogmatic, inclusive, holistic, relativistic, and meta. Epistemic, metaphysical, grounded in mysticism and in consciousness, and not partial to any partisan or sectarian human invention or construction or organization. And of course, that's otherwise known as stage turquoise. Spiral dynamic stage turquoise. So it's not that the religious fundamentalists are wrong per se, it's just that they're very, very partial and very limited in their way of going about aping genuine consciousness and love and holism. They don't know any better. They need better tools, better methods, but the problem is that their minds are so closed that they're resistant to learning those tools and methods. The problem with stage orange, which comes after blue, is that stage orange tends to overly dismiss and poo-poo integrity and morality as quaint religious fantasies and wishful thinking, enforced by some external God. But see, integrity is not enforced by an external God. You are God, and if you want to realize you're God, you're going to have to fully come into integrity. Otherwise, you won't realize that you're God. You don't have to. Nothing bad will happen to you other than the consequence of your own karma and suffering, which is pretty bad. It's punishment enough. You see. So there's a lot of truth in religion, but there's also a lot of bullshit. And that's the difficulty of it, is that it's so, the truth and the bullshit in religion, and even in spirituality and in New Age teachings, is so muddled together that for many stage orange sort of scientific rational people, they're so disgusted by the whole thing that they don't even want to spend time disaggregating the truth from the bullshit. And so they just throw everything out, maybe with the bathwater. And then that leads to the sort of lack of ethics and lack of morality of stage orange, which we see on Wall Street and business, in the business world, with capitalism run rampant and amok and all this sort of stuff.